The temptation is to file a big class action lawsuit, but I don't think that can work. For one thing, the banks are too big. Chase has $2 trillion of assets on the books. I don't even know how much that is, but they can certainly match any combination of lawyers that I could possibly bring together. I think the way we have to do this is case by case, courtroom by courtroom, judge by judge. Bring each case on its facts into each courtroom in the country and appeal to the rational, thinking, caring mind of the judge. Some judges will agree with the banks and some judges will agree with the homeowners. This is not something that can be resolved at the trial level. It's something that has to be resolved in the courts of appeal. And so the more judges that are given the opportunity to make a decision, the more facts can be presented to the courts of appeal. And that's where ultimately the answer will come from. And so I'm not looking for a big class action that will somehow solve this problem. I'm looking for a democratic movement of people who go to judges in every county in the United States and present their case and ask the judge to do the right thing. And from this, what will percolate up will be a new precedent that we can turn back to in the years to come so that we don't make this same mistake again. Our system went crazy. It went crazy with greed. And now we're paying the price for that, not just in this country, but all over the world. It's up to each one of us to fix that. We can do that. We've met challenges before. This country was founded upon very brave people who acted on principle and came up with new solutions to problems that had gone back for thousands of years. We happen to find ourselves now at another one of those opportunities. And it's up to each one of us to act according to our highest principles so that we see our way through this and can move on to a better life. It would be a mistake to think that this will be won or lost in the trial court. The trial is an opportunity to create a record, to introduce facts, and to make arguments. That record then goes to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal attempts to bring together relevant precedents and come up with a logical conclusion. But even the courts of appeal can't solve this. This is a systemic break. And the only court that actually has the ability to solve this problem is the United States Supreme Court. And so as each of us take our cases to the court and we make our record, we are preparing for the Supreme Court to make the right decision. That's where this will get straightened out. There's no other court that has that authority. The first thing that we need to be doing is sharing with each other our pleadings, our motions, our requests for discovery, so that as something works, others can take advantage of that lesson learned and present those pleadings in their courts. And to remember that the goal is not always to win, but the goal is to present the facts so that there is a record that can be reviewed on appeal. If a person cannot afford to pay a fee, the court will waive the fee. There is always a court reporter present. If there isn't, insist that there be a court reporter present to keep an accurate record of everything that is said in the courtroom. And that record goes to the Court of Appeal. And we have to learn from each other how to bring an appeal. It differs slightly from one state to the next. But those cases need to go to the Court of Appeal. And then it's just a matter of one more paper to take the case on to the Supreme Court. This isn't just going to be done by people representing themselves. More and more lawyers are going to get involved in this fight. But don't be discouraged if a judge rules against you. That's just the first step. The other thing is you stay in your house as long as you can. And you ask the Court of Appeal to enter a stay so that the bank can't take the house. Just because the bank won at the trial level doesn't mean they get to take the house. There's some judge that gets to decide whether or not things will stay the way they are. If the homeowner's taking good care of the house, there's no damage possible to the bank. We all know that sooner or later the houses are going to go up in value, so what's the harm? This notion that all the bank has to do is file a piece of paper somewhere and they get somebody's house is crazy. Nobody gets to do that. You can't just file a piece of paper somewhere and take somebody else's house unless they let you. Most of the time people are walking away. When I started reading the notices of sale in the newspaper and driving around to see where those houses were and who was in them, almost always the house was empty. And that was weeks before there was a sale. People would get that notice and they would just pack up and leave. And that's what has to change. When we get that notice, we have to pack ourselves down to the courthouse and start filing papers. And it really takes some inner strength to do that. To say, this is my home, I'm not leaving. Not until the sheriff shows up and hauls myself out of this house.
What if the sheriff shows up? What do you do then?
Well, actually, in Massachusetts, they've rallied whole neighborhoods to show up and stand around the house. And in some communities, the sheriff just shakes his head and says, I'm not going to do it anymore. There's too many. I kick these people out of their house, and then I have two problems. I have homeless people that I have to keep track of, and I have an empty house that I have to keep track of. It's much better for us if people stay in their own homes. And that's happening more and more. County recorders can refuse to file records unless they're properly filled out. They can get much better at studying what the banks are giving them and deciding whether or not to file them or not. I was reading the biography of John Adams, written by Macallan. And John Adams was an ancestor of mine, so I've always been curious what his life was like. And they were bringing together their best ideas in order to create a country that we all have inherited. And I think we're at a time now where we have to look back to those founders and emulate the courage and the intelligence and the integrity that they were able to call forth when they founded this country. We've come to a crisis. We've almost been consumed by our own greed. It's not just this country that's facing that problem. Human beings have almost consumed the remainder of the natural resources of this planet. And now we have to face the challenge that we've never had to face before. How do we rein in our own greed? How do we come to a balance so that we can remain here and coexist with all life on the planet? I believe that this banking crisis is our opportunity to come to terms with who it is we really are. The things that got us here won't carry us into the future. We need new ideas. We need new stories. We need new principles. And each of us has a piece of that puzzle. So it's time to get to work.